History is a narrative.
Oh, you're going to film it?
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah, I don't care.
Yeah, let's do it.
You'll be famous. So basically, I mean, we are Muslims here. That's the reason you got the free Quran. May I ask what was the reason you asked for the free Quran, or?
Just out of interest. I like
Okay.
to,
Yeah. Have you read it?
I've read bits of it before, but ages and ages and ages ago. I was much younger.
So I spoke to you. So your background is agnostic, atheist.
Yeah.
You similar?
Yeah, similar.
Similar. Okay.
I would say that I'm so open that I don't want to ascribe myself to any words. I'm just really developing and thinking.
Yeah.
So.
Only you know what you are. We can't put a label to it. We can't put a label to it, and we cannot describe it. So that's the reason we ask, so we know from what angle to approach the discussion from, because we believe that all of us we know where we come from. For example, we know that we came from our parents, and their parents came from them. But ultimately, we ask this question, this existential question: where did all of this come from? All the matter, all the energy that you see in the universe, or in fact, where did the universe itself come from? So, I'm sure you guys must have thought about it. What is the most rational, coherent response that you have got from this?
I'm guessing we're doing cosmological argument here.
Yeah. So, what did you gather from that?
I know the argument.
How does it go?
So you can't have an infinite regressing.
No, even before that. What is the first?
Oh, so everything happens has to have a cause.
Yeah. So everything that exists,
yes,
must have a cause. Anything that begins to exist must have a cause. Not everything that exists.
Okay.
So anything that begins to exist, we know that the universe began to exist according to the scientific consensus, something like 13.8 billion years. Yes. So it must have a cause. Now, what do you think that causes?
I don't know.
In your worldview, of course.
I don't know. I think it's quite a big jump to go from like a being to then like a personal God. That's.
So you think there's a being?
I'm not too sure. I think there might be. I don't think I can demonstrate if there is or isn't. So I think it'd be quite arrogant to say there isn't, because I can't say I can't prove.
I mean, the reason we say that there is an intelligent being behind all this is because we actually see design in this universe, whether it's from the most microscopic thing to the entire universe itself.
That I do disagree with, though.
Which part?
I think just because something looks like it's being designed, it doesn't necessarily.
Okay, give me an example.
I mean,
that you think is designed, but it's not really designed.
I think it's positive evolution.
Yeah. Let me give you.
I think it's almost a series of accidents.
Even evolution. Take the DNA, for example.
Right, sure.
Do you see design in DNA? If you've done any studies,
no.
Even high school level or your secondary level, because when you talk about DNA, you're talking about something which is consistent in all human beings.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
That's how you know the species sometimes. Even if it's completely like in an accident or something, you'd be able to identify whether that's an animal or a human being.
Correct.
Yes?
Yeah.
So how is it possible for all of this DNA, which we know is a specific code in there and a specific design in there? Yeah. How do you think it came about just randomly?
I think we got really, really, really lucky.
I think it's time.
Come on, seriously? Are you going to put it down to luck?
I think you absolutely can. Yeah.
I don't think you can have anything randomly existing which is consistent.
Everything is random.
In fact, random itself is not random.
Yeah, I know.
If you ask the people who deal with random, they'll tell you there are certain sequences in this, and hence it's not random.
But could you just take consciousness for example? I always question, well, how the hell are we conscious?
Very good question, actually. Very good question.
And
what's the answer to that?
The first answer for me is we're never going to know. So I accept that we're never going to know.
No, but you can't say we're never going to know.
No. It doesn't mean I'm not going to continuously talk about it like we are.
Yeah.
But for me, I would rather, with creation, for example, I accept that as humans, we're going to have no idea of knowing.
No, but why do you say there won't be?
Accept to just to not know and think and develop forever. But I will never know, and I will never say whether there is or.
Why would you say you would never know?
Because how would we?
Unless you know the future, how can you say you will never know? You don't know the future, do you? It is like me saying I've lost a ring, I will never ever find it. Maybe somebody who has the device, somebody has the tools, are able to find it. If I'm not able to find it, but for you to make this assertion that you will never find an answer to such a thing is kind of problematic in itself, because then you are assuming that you know the future.
Okay, I wouldn't say that
I don't know what he meant by we, but I'm assuming human beings, right?
I wouldn't say I'm predicting the future. I'm saying that I'm making a wise decision, having looked at the history and having looked at the way the world's developed, how there are multiple religions and stories that people love to ascribe themselves. You know, we have people who love to think about what's it called, star signs and everything, which I love to think about. But that's their own narrative and story.
No, but hold on.
And there is in history.
People have spoken about consciousness. Other religions have spoken about consciousness. In fact, Islam speaks about consciousness. Today, if you go and speak to a psychologist, they will speak to you about consciousness. They'll tell you about emotions and how you actually are impacted by it. So consciousness itself, which we call the nafs, okay, it's quite broad in its understanding, but we do have a lot of information about it. Yes?
What do you think?
For example,
why are we conscious?
for example, how would you define consciousness?
I define it as an inner awakeness, an inner monologue, and an inner aliveness.
It's basically just awareness.
Sorry?
It's just awareness. So if awareness, you know, to be aware of your environment, that's if you're conscious of your environment, hence you're conscious.
That sounds like you're saying it's like a physical thing then.
No, it is not. It's not physical thing. Your consciousness is something which the scientists have no empirical evidence for. So it cannot be physical. Because if it was physical, they would have by now had the evidence for consciousness. The reason it's called the hard problem of consciousness is because you, I, and all the scientists know that we have consciousness, yet they have no empirical evidence for it.
But just because they don't have empirical evidence now doesn't mean they won't have it in the future.
Exactly my point. That's what the lady was saying, that we will never know. To make this assertion itself is problematic because you don't have the tools maybe right now. But all I'm saying is that, in fact, there's something called the philosophy of science, which does believe in consciousness, which believes in the metaphysical, yes, which can explain to you things about emotions and so on. Like I said, psychology is one of them. Yeah. But science itself is something which is a study of the naturalistic world, right, which is beyond the scope of science to understand the metaphysical, like your consciousness.
Going back to that point previously, you're saying it's beyond the point of science to understand the metaphysical.
Different sciences. One is called the philosophy of science, the other is naturalistic science. So even science has different fields.
Okay, but the philosophy of science part just sounds like...
Like what?
I don't really...
It's much more broad than actual science, you know that.
Yeah, but how is it science though?
It is science because you cannot separate things like metaphysical.
What is the philosophy of science?
For example, things which are beyond just the naturalistic world, it takes that into account. Your emotions, for example. You cannot see your emotions in a lab or under a microscope and say, okay, this is how you're feeling now. So if I were to ask you, whom do you love more, your pet or your parents? How can you, other than yourself, how will you prove objectively to anybody else your answer? You can't.
But that's not really the philosophy of science.
It is.
You could probably
ask a psychologist, and they will be able to tell you, asking you certain questions.
If they could see your like sensory reaction to like negative things happening to your parents and your pets.
No. Electrochemical impulses have got nothing to do with consciousness or your emotions. A person taking drugs can show those signs. To do with that. It's just how these are mechanical things within your body. They undergo a certain change depending on certain observations within at that particular time. Like I said, it can be induced by chemicals. Do you know that?
Yeah, but I think that's like
it's got nothing to do with consciousness.
I think that's like a precursor to consciousness, though.
No, it's not.
Okay, that's different.
It's the operation of your brain, right, through the neurons, which are physical, and how they interact at that particular time. It's got nothing to do with consciousness itself.
I disagree.
Yeah?
That's all.
I think they wouldn't call it, my friend, they wouldn't call it the heart problem.
Much better. That's getting to the point where...
No, that's psychology. So the psychologists, they ask you certain questions, and based on that, they deduce the answer that this is, yes, you love your cat more than your mom. See what I mean? So this is through inference, and there's nothing wrong in that. But that doesn't mean that they have evidence of that they can observe under a microscope. So it is based on inference. See what I mean? Similarly, we can understand where the universe came from based on inference. So if I were to ask you that the universe created itself, would you believe that? Or would that even be rational?
I'm not sure, actually.
Okay, it did exist at one point, and then it created itself. think it didn't exist,
It didn't exist, and
it
created
created
I
itself.
don't think
Is
it
that
makes-
rational?
you can't- No, it doesn't make sense.
Thank you.
It doesn't make sense that it created itself.
Yes.
But why?
I would be saying, like saying a mother gave birth to herself.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
appreciate
something
your
like that,
point.
similar.
I appreciate
It's an analogy. I know it's not perfect.
So taking it back to like what you think a creator is, then like what? Is
Okay, so before we jump to the creator, we need to go through certain inferences and to understand, like the Kalam cosmological argument which you talked about. The first point of that is anything that begins to exist must have a cause. Now we have already eliminated that the cause could be the universe itself. Do you agree? Because the universe didn't exist. It didn't exist in the first place. There's no way it could have caused itself. You answered the question already.
I know this goes. I know how
Yeah,
this
we've
goes,
done.
so
I've done
I'll
this
let
as
you-
well.
Okay.
So go on then.
But you answered the question for me actually, so I'm so glad. Let's work for me. Alhamdulillah.
Okay, let's say Kate. Say that we've taken that as a.
Yeah,
as
that
a
is
fact.
so. That is taken care of.
Yeah.
Now the other possibility, where many people say, is that can something come from nothing? Think before you answer. Can something, like you and me, like the universe itself, can it come from nothing? And if you want, we can go through what nothing actually means.
I know what it means, but I
How do you define absolute nothingness?
not even like a void.
Yeah.
There literally is
Yeah.
nothing.
How would you define absolute
So you
nothingness?
can't really define it.
It's not like
It's very hard
Okay,
to.
let me rephrase that question. Does nothing exist?
No.
no.
Good answer. I'm surprised you guys know this, mashallah. Let's work for me, like I said. Because many
We've
times,
studied philosophy.
alhamdulillah, many times I have to actually go through a lot of lengthy
I'm sure,
discussions
I'm sure.
just to understand, make them understand that nothing doesn't even exist. Because absolute nothingness, I would define it as absence of everything. How is that for philosophical answer? Absence
It's
of
spot on, I would say,
absence of everything that you can imagine, that you can think of, that you
It's
know.
impossible now that we're here, like nothing
Yeah.
doesn't exist. And it never
Yeah, so it doesn't exist. So something that doesn't exist cannot bring about something that does exist. Do you agree? Something that doesn't even exist, like nothing,
Sure.
cannot bring about something that does exist, like you and me.
Okay.
Yeah? Let alone the universe. Okay, so now we have eliminated two things. The universe cannot create itself. It cannot come from nothing. Now, what is the best alternative you can give me? Because I don't want to use any terms from my theist perspective and put it in your mouth. I want you to, because you guys come from a philosophical background, give me your best shot as to what could be the cause of the universe. Do you study philosophy? Or you have
No, I did. I did it at A level.
A level?
Only a little bit.
Okay, yourself?
Yeah, but I did English as well.
Oh, that's good.
So
Literature
not
does help.
like loads.
It does help, yeah. Shall we just say something? Let's say X. Something created the universe.
I can take that.
Yeah?
I can take that. Something.
Okay. Now give.
Thing.
Yeah, thing. It has to be. It cannot be nothing. So it must be.
To me, it
The opposite of
definitely
nothing
can't
is
be a
something, right?
person.
Okay.
Let's say something. It cannot be nothing. It has to be something.
It definitely can't be a person.
Okay. Now we need to ask you what is a person.
A human like you.
Okay. Yeah, it's definitely not a person. I agree. Okay. Do you acknowledge it has a will?
It has what?
A will.
I will.
To bring something into existence, you need a will.
No, I'm not sure about that.
No,
Why?
I'm not sure.
How can something happen without a will? If you're an agency, in order for you to act, you need a will to bring about that action into manifestation. In order to manifest any of your actions, as a being, you must have a will.
Okay, but we haven't established that the something that created the universe was being.
Yeah, but that's the reason I'm asking. If it has a will, then by definition it must be a being.
No, but for example,
But,
like,
So let's understand.
But does it have to have? When you say will, what
Yeah.
do you mean by will?
In order to cause something.
it's tried actively to. Do
No,
this,
not actively. In order to cause something, you must action it.
Okay.
Okay?
but
So if I were to move a ball,
a leaf flying through the air, that's no will.
Yeah.
It's still moving.
yeah.
I don't.
So the
think
cause of that-
something needs to have will.
No, the cause of that is the wind. Okay?
There's no will.
That's fine, but in order to,
So-
the wind didn't come from just a void, would it? Everything, like I
There's
said,
no will in wind moving.
no, I know, but
So
the
there
wind.
can be movement and
Do you think the wind?
something
Do you think
without
the?
will.
Okay, do you think the wind is self-sufficient, independent, or the wind itself is contingent on something else?
The will is the will?
The will is contingent.
Will or the wind?
Sorry. Okay, the wind. I'm getting confused myself.
The wind.
Yes, yes.
The wind is contingent on something else.
Exactly. It has to be.
No, yeah.
Remember the first law or the first rule of Kalam cosmology? Anything that exists, yes? Or sorry, anything that begins to exist must have a cause. Okay. The wind began to exist somewhere around the globe, I'm pretty sure. Yes? Doesn't matter which wind you talk about. Yeah. Okay? It has a cause. So anything that and we have to go through this exercise of what caused it. And you'll come to a conclusion that anything that begins to exist is contingent. So now going back to this, the cause of the universe, which we call something, yes? Okay, before even we speak about will, let's at least say that it is not contingent. Because if it was contingent, then you'll have an infinite regress where you're going to ask, okay, what caused this? What caused X? What caused Y? What caused that? So on. See what I mean? And it's a never-ending infinite regress, which in reality doesn't exist, just like nothing. Logically speaking, you cannot have something going on.
We have established that. I have accepted that there is. We eliminated the first two things.
So nothing and universe is causing.
Itself.
Yeah.
So
and the third thing we can eliminate is infinite regress.
And we have eliminated that. Yeah.
Yeah.
There can't be an infinite regress. Yes.
Yeah.
But what we say, so there's something fine, but you're saying that something needs to have will.
Yes.
That's what I'm not sure about.
Because, like I said, in order to cause something to come into existence when it didn't exist at all.
No, just say, sorry, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, sure.
But think about it this way: like, if you have all the ingredients, because when we're talking about the universe, we're talking about like a really long time, and maybe people like to say that things happen over a long period of time, and it's a mechanism. There's no need for will and all this stuff. If you think about it this way, like if you had the ingredients of a recipe in a kitchen, you just had the ingredients there with no willing agent. If you left it there for 1 million years, will the recipe ever be made? So you could have all the right ingredients for a universe, for existing, all these things, right? But if you didn't have an agent with a will that willed this and took all these things and created this.
To action it. You need something or someone to action it.
You need somebody, an agent to do this thing. So you could tell now that
why are we saying it's somebody?
No, but no, we are still on something.
So surely
we're still on something.
Sorry. Yeah.
We're still on something. So in order, look, if anything that has a will, then automatically it is a being. Do you agree?
It's a being.
A being.
A being. It could be a human being, it could be another being. Okay, all this, because you as a human being, you have a will.
No, but the other example that we use is, could you just chuck up a load of letters and it lands into Shakespeare or something like that, right?
No, not even.
That would be magic. Where do you get that from?
No, but technically that could happen. You could
but there is still a willing agent. Do you see that? No, do you see the willing agent though? Like to get the shit, you're still throwing it out.
No, but
So if you just had lettuce,
you still need the raw material.
I appreciate that, but that doesn't necessarily have to be a being.
No, but when you say, look, you can't expect letters to just form a book. This is.
No, I agree with that. I agree with that.
No, but the being could be even something.
No. If you were just to have all those letters in a pile, once something would have to throw those letters up for it to land into.
Yeah, but do you notice how that thing? Do you notice how that thing has will, has volition?
But you could have it.
In order to have
a machine that does that.
Yeah. So even if you want to say that, it's some kind of like willing agent.
The machine has to be designed. The machine didn't pop out of existence, does it?
No.
So we have to go. Whatever example you gave, you have to know. Go back to the first rule of Kalam cosmological.
An actual machine. It could be something natural that has that.
Yeah. So give us this.
Been designed or made.
So give us this example. What is this thing? What is this natural thing, which can bring about the universe? Go on. I'm waiting.
First of all, what natural thing?
I'm not making any sort of.
All I'm saying is that in order to action it.
I'm not making any claim there.
That's fine. In order for this natural thing to action something, it must have a will. In order to design the universe, in order to create the universe, in order to bring from nothing something, all of this requires someone, which is something, someone or something, which is a willing agent.
Okay.
But so this agent is.
How we go from something to someone?
Yeah,
like I said, the will. You have to. You cannot divorce the will from this agent now.
For me, I just can't.
Show me anything that happens without it being caused. It has to have a cause. and this
appreciate
causation.
That, but it's not. But lots of things aren't consciously caused, though.
No, but there must be some. Look, anything that begins to exist, like you took the example of wind. You haven't shown me anything that does not have a cause so far. Everything has a cause.
No, I agree.
Okay, so the only thing that does not have a cause is what brought is this necessary thing, if you want to call it something or some being, whatever you want to call it. This necessary entity, yes, has to bring about the universe, and in order to bring it about into existence, it must have a will. Yeah, just ignore this. Okay?
And the number is 9.
So what I mean?
So I got distracted a little bit there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No.
The speaker's corner, we got hackers here.
Not your fault. Don't worry.
Okay, so in order for anything to be caused, you cannot do it without a will in order to action it.
Okay.
If you want to bring about an action, let's say you are a conscious being and you are bringing something to the world, you have your own creation, for example, or even your own baby, for example, you must have a will to do that. Yes? Or something that brings about it from it didn't exist to existence.
Okay.
You cannot do it without being...
Let's say yes, because I don't want
No, but you can't just say yes. Look, if something is coming from nothing, in order to bring it into existence, there must be a will involved. You can't divorce it from...
But can you just tell me again what you mean by will, specifically?
Okay, means actively, consciously bringing it into existence.
No, I think you're confusing things now.
So why does this?
Which part am I confusing?
Confusing. I think you're.
How would you define will? When you're willing to do something?
Yeah, no, I'd say the same thing.
Yeah, exactly. So why are you saying I'm confusing them?
But lots of things happen. It's not. There's no conscious thought process.
For every example you gave me, I'm pretty sure it has a cause.
But
here we have gone beyond that. We have gone beyond.
A cause doesn't mean will, though.
No, but the cause. Look, anything that has a cause, okay, then is either contingent, or it is non-contingent, like this first cause or the uncaused cause. Yes. In order for this uncaused cause to cause something, it must have a will. There's no other way around it. You show me why that is incoherent. Because what we talk about is everything in the universe that you give example, it is something which is dependent on something else. Hence, the causation is contingent and
Trying to think.
which is a good thing, as human beings. That is our best tool.
I think more of like a semantic argument here.
It
the
is really,
semantics
the whole
is
thing
the
is
thing that
language.
you're.
If you want to call causation semantics, that's up to you. But it's pretty scientific here in terms of something which is contingent and something which is not contingent, not dependent on anything, self-sufficient, self-existing, has a will, has intelligence, designs everything that you see from the micro to the macro. Okay, it must have a will.
Okay, but yeah.
And why you still didn't tell me? You still didn't tell me why you disagree with it, other than just shaking your head.
Well, no, because as I said,
Can I ask a quick random question? Did the sun exist before the being?
Of course.
The sun existed.
If the universe existed, the sun is part of the universe.
Yeah.
So
I thought we went beyond that already.
No, I'm just like, what existed before the being, the something existed?
No. We are taking it one step at a time. I'm saying the universe itself didn't exist at one point, and everything that you can imagine in the universe, including all the matter, all the energy, all the galaxies, all the suns, yes, all of these are contingent. All of these, all of this is contingent on the creator, something if you want to call it, someone if you want to call it, some being or some entity.
But we can't. You know how we can't contemplate nothing.
Yes.
So what happened? What was there, or what existed before that? Then.
Yeah, we can't contemplate. I agree with you.
You could understand the concept.
Yeah.
Like you could understand the words.
I can't understand the concept.
Well, let's see. So, absolute nothingness is the absence of everything.
Yeah,
we already eliminated nothing.
But that's just language. That's just like words that we've used. Like we can't actually contemplate.
Okay, I'll give you a good example.
Your ideas have to be put into words.
There's these.
Yeah, but
in order to communicate, that's the only way human beings can communicate.
Yeah, but just because we can put it into words doesn't mean.
I'll show you. I'll give you a good example in geometry. In geometry, there's these shapes, like I forgot what the word, like a thousand shape polygon, I guess.
Okay, yeah.
There's names for these shapes, yeah. We could never conceptualize, we could never think of or imagine them, basically, but we can understand them conceptually. So you can like see or vision in your mind what a thousand shape polygon actually looks like, because we've never seen anything like it.
5 dimensions.
But we could define one. We could define one, and you can understand that this word means
Okay.
thousand shape polygon. You don't need to be able to see it to understand it. You know what I mean?
Okay, that's fine. Can I quickly just before I
Yeah,
forget
sure,
it?
go on.
Okay, so okay, that makes sense to me. But then, so say there is this nothing. Then
Nothing doesn't
No,
exist.
there isn't. That's the point.
No, there is a something.
No, but before the being that you're saying, before the being created the universe,
Yeah, so
there
there's still the
there
being.
was nothing.
No,
Oh.
there was never
So
nothing.
there was always.
No, no, wait. No,
There's
no.
always a being.
Yes.
And that's what I meant by the necessary.
There's always been
Yes.
a being.
That's why I said a necessary being, as opposed to the contingent existence, like the universe, like you and me, everything. So there has to be something always there, someone or some entity always there, which we call the necessary existence, the necessary
Why do we call
being.
it someone? Because there was no
Because I-
earth for the someone to be on.
because-
So is this someone? What is this someone? What is
It's
it?
God.
Yeah, I know, but what is God?
You can call- look.
Energy,
To make things
No.
easier, we don't believe in God as a human being. So when we say someone, we're not talking about a human being.
So why do
We're
we
talking
attach the being's language to what you believe is God?
Because a being
That's
has
a big problem I have.
a being has to be have a will in order to do something, to action something. In this case, the universe, creating the universe. So it has to be an intelligent being with a will.
The problem I've got that is I don't necessarily think it has to be like a conscious, intentional thing. Then.
Why not?
Why does it have to be?
Because that.
Because
Can I tell you
I'm
why?
not making the
Can I
claim
tell
that.
you
I'm
why?
not saying it wasn't.
Let me
but
tell you
I'm
why.
not-
Let me
I'm-
tell you
go
why.
on.
Because if it's not an intentional unconscious cause, if it's a mechanistic, that's the only other alternative.
Sure.
If it's mechanistic,
Okay.
like you said with the AI, eternal causes have eternal effects. So what does that mean? So if there is, for example, if I turn the light switch on, there's no lag between me turning it on and the light coming on. So, because we know that existence wasn't always here, and we know that prior to existence, there was this thing, that means the cause is not a mechanistic cause. You see what I'm saying? Because mechanistic causes, there's no lag. If the cause exists, the effect necessarily exists. So if there's a being, there needs to be an effect. There needs to be a universe. But we know the universe didn't always exist, and we know for the universe to exist, there must have always been a being. So you see, there's a time where, or pre-time you could say, where there was the being and no universe. That means the cause is not mechanistic. That's the problem.
I still want to know, why do you disagree with
So it has to be
a conscious,
It has to be there was a point in
conscious
time
willing
where It was
agent?
an intentional agent that
Yeah.
made it to come about, because it wasn't forced. I just explained, like electrical currents on a circuit or anything like that. Like if there was a if the cause occurs, effect necessarily occurs. That's a mechanistic cause. But an intentional cause, like I, for example, have the ability to see, but I could delay that. I could delay sight by closing my eyes, but I could intentionally want to see by opening my eyes. See what I'm saying?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not following this about that.
Okay, just
Some
stick
of
with
the words.
let's stick
Yeah,
with-
I was trying.
Yeah, keep it simple, bro.
the electrical immediately if
Can
everything
I
is
know what
working.
you're trying to prove now?
I'm just trying to show his the fact that this agent or this being or this thing has will or is an agent. It's a volition that's
Actively
conscious.
trying
to
Yes,
create.
actively trying to create. It's not some mechanism that's like dead. You know what I mean? Like a dead
I still
mechanism.
want to know from you guys, why do you think this being or this entity, say for example, cannot be conscious and willing if you know that it is going to bring this existence, including the universe, to be created? Why do you think it's not conscious or willing? So for anyone to create anything, they must have consciousness.
He's saying it could have been the other way.
No, but what's the alternative? It cannot be mechanical, because mechanical, then you must imply there must be some other matter, some other thing before the universe then, which we have no evidence for.
So like mechanistic things require like calibration, require somebody to bring them about. etc.
see,
So
yeah, I see.
they're dependent, like the way they're functioning. They're dependent on something that configures their function.
Yeah.
That's one issue. Another issue that I'd say to you is the issue that I was talking about before. mechanistic causes don't have ability to not manifest their effects.
How do you know that the being that created the universe was created by a being before that?
Oh, good. So if that, let's say that this is the case, then you wouldn't be talking about the being that would be the ultimate creator. Because the thing that is the ultimate creator that everything else relies upon
It's like the first
cannot.
bit.
Yes, the first exactly.
Yeah,
It cannot
I see.
because remember the problem of infinite regress. Because okay, if you say the thing that created the universe also had something to create, that means we're not talking about God.
No,
we're
I
talking about
appreciate it.
But
there needs
surely the
something before.
ultimate
Yeah, yeah.
creator has. Doesn't the ultimate creator still have an infinite?
Sorry?
No,
Doesn't
because
that
it's
still have an
uncreated.
infinite-
Let me tell you what.
Because it is
you're making a-
uncreated, it's self-sufficient, it's
It's only
independent.
things that have been that began to exist
Yes.
needed cause before. And the argument is it never began to exist; it always existed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And even if you strip it away from time, yeah, because some people like to talk about timing issues like time.
Let's not complicate it.
I'm not gonna complicate it. If you just do this, if you take the sum aggregate, if you just collect all things that are dependent on other things, like the wind, like the universe, everything within the universe, all that, there's a sum. All that, because it's dependent on something else, that whole set is dependent on something else. And because everything that is dependent is inside that set, it cannot be dependent on something that is dependent also. Why? Because all dependent things are inside that set. You get what
So
I'm saying?
we need to categorize everything you see, the universe, and you cannot say that everything that is outside the universe, yes, in this case, because we don't know right now. So we are using inference here, and that's how we conclude that there must be an entity which brought about all this into existence, but then we have to give that entity attributes, because you cannot talk about any entity without attributes. And that's why we say it. In order for it to create, it must be a willing agent to create, the ability to create, the intelligence, it must have a will. You cannot say it doesn't, because then it wouldn't make sense for it to bring into existence this universe.
Okay, so
That's the most
obviously
plausible
this
explanation.
argument has gone to a point where it's like it really is hard to not agree that there is. But as the journey of argument, okay, we're at a point where it's hard to argue that there's no ultimate creator that's always existed.
No, there is. Okay,
It's hard, yeah,
That has
okay.
always, it's hard not.
That's
to,
the most plausible explanation. Yeah,
At the point we're at now.
good.
But what I find tricky now then is like what is that being? Like what is that? Is what? Because I accept that loads of things can't be explained in our world, in our like things are so nuanced and crazy, and sometimes you can't explain things. But some things we can explain quite well, and even if we're wrong, we'll science is evolving.
Well, that's-
But I've never had anyone say an explanation to me of like what scientifically, or not even scientifically, I don't care about science, but like what even is that being? Like, is it energy? What is it?
Okay, so are you asking what it is made of?
Yeah, sorry. What's it made of?
Okay.
And what does it look like?
Now
And
you
what does
see.
it- and how does it will?
Yeah,
Where
so
does the will come from? Because
in-
we know will comes from our brain normally.
No? Not really. You can be willing. So if you say your heart, for example,
Okay.
could be heart, could be a
willing
brain.
comes from a human being.
So all of
not
that,
an animal, living.
all of it goes back to your consciousness. All of this, including your will. Okay, if you're conscious, only then you can willingly do something.
Okay.
Okay, if you're unconscious, if you're willing, I don't know, metaphorically, you can't do anything. So it goes back to your consciousness. And then we believe that God, because now I'm using the term God for the first time in case you didn't notice, because we have come to the conclusion that this being is intelligent, has the ability to create at least three things. And the other thing is it's uncreated, because otherwise it would be contingent. So it is a necessary being in this case, and the necessary being at least has these qualities, these minimal qualities at least. Now, when we look at the Quran, we know that this being is able to communicate with us. Okay, so it didn't just create us and then say, yes, go about your daily life as you wish. No, it is able. If God is able to create the universe, is able to communicate with us, and this is where we
Why
as
isn't it easier to communicate?
why is it? Sorry, why is it?
Why isn't it easier for us to communicate? Why is it a question?
No,
Why is it
because
a question for us? Why are we talking about it?
Okay.
Why don't I know who thinks this?
because the reason you haven't maybe looked into it, Just like you got the Quran today, maybe. Alhamdulillah, inshallah, you read it, and then you'll be able to answer those existential questions. You know, that difference, that's what defines us different from the deist. You studied about deism, right?
Yes.
So in deism, the God is just created everything, and then that's it. Okay, everything else is mechanical in a way. So you were saying
I was
something?
gonna say, so sister, we actually believe that you're actually born with that understanding. So we believe, like as Muslims, we actually do believe that you're born believing in God. So we actually think that the reason you're saying that, oh, why is it more clear to me, or why don't I already believe, or why not? We don't think that that's a product of God. We think that simply in the Quran it says that it talks about your natural inclination. We believe in this thing called a fitrah. So your fitrah is your natural predisposition to recognize your creator, to recognize there's a higher power. Obviously, we're not saying kids from Christian families are born and they're saying, I'm Muslim. No. There's this inclination inside us. So it's like a longing, like a yearning, like a spirit, like a spiritual fulfillment that we require to connect with our creator. This is something actually that they've done studies.
Extremely subjective.
Yeah, no.
have
So that's
so
what I was just
much-
going to tell you. It's actually something that isn't subjective that they've done studies on at Oxford University. Justin Barrett has a famous study about it. Basically, they've done studies on children that come from atheistic backgrounds, from countries that are more secular and atheistic. And basically, they've seen that these children, from a young age, they have this natural inclination to recognize there's a divine higher power of some sorts.